3, 2, 1, we're clicked. And we are live. Hello, everybody. We have Mr. Tyler Stout with us. Yes, I can't believe it either. Tyler, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, of course.
It really is. We're just so grateful to have you on what has been an incredible weekend. And lots of people have been in the over the past sort of half an hour or so sharing their sort of what they really enjoyed, so far, and lots of people really looking forward to this session because it's you. If you could give people a little for those people who criminally might not be so aware of what your sort of background is. If you could give just an idea of the kinds of stuff you create and what you create it for, gigs and movies and whatever else, that would be great.
Yeah, the history of my life in 30 seconds.
It can be longer than 30.
35. Let's see, I started doing gig posters, I guess, right out of college. That was now a few years ago, 1990 something. Anyway, and now, and then it moved into just doing a lot of gig posters and then movie posters, and now I still do quite a few of both. We run our own business, I guess. Sarah does all the shipping and stuff, and I do all the other stuff. And yeah, I don't know, we do t-shirts and stickers and posters and art prints and just stay busy doing that. I guess a lot of people probably know me most for my movie posters. That's kind of the big thing that I was known for, and I still do some of those occasionally. So yeah, we stay busy.
I'd say you were saying about how you sort of run it as a business and stuff. Does it feel like you've got a sort of not necessarily a factory, but like there's like a chain, there's a line, a process line for getting stuff out and all of that, and it's like all hands on deck when you do releases and that sort of thing, because you brought stuff sort of in-house. Is it a production?
Yeah, I mean, it is. We don't have anybody working for us. We have my kids. They kind of help out, and sometimes they're friends. My oldest is now 17, so she's got a bunch of friends that are willing to work for minimum wage. And so we do, if we have a big poster shipment, then we'll have them over, and there's tables and folding. They don't usually roll the posters just because that's kind of something that takes a little bit of a craft. So they put stickers on stuff and tape boxes up and stuff. And but it's still pretty much just a mom and pop operation. We've never really expanded past just me and Sarah, because it's nice to be hands-on. We don't have to pay to have like a corporate office or anything. I mean, it's just a real small organization. It might seem bigger from the outside, but it's just us.
But I think it's probably a small operation, but you've got a big name within the sort of culture. So people look forward to what you release, and I know that there have been some, in terms of the stuff that you've put out some interesting projects recently, and I don't know if part of that is due to the pandemic, and so like you would like to release movie posters when the cinemas are open, for example, and they've been closed, so that hasn't happened. I know there was some stuff that was going to come out that's obviously been pushed back, and gigs obviously. So what's that been like for you over the past sort of year and a half in terms of having those creative outlets and still being able to put things out? I know obviously you have had Transformers and Terminator and Halloween, but you've obviously done other things, and what's it been like, and has that been cathartic for you during a difficult time?
It has been. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of, just the world is going through so many changes. You're kind of looking for some sort of normalcy, and so right when it first hit, a lot of our gigs just all got canceled. So we had posters, and every show was pretty much getting canceled. And so that was, kind of a time to step back and evaluate what we were going to do. And we decided just to get more into like art prints and stickers and stuff that didn't necessarily have a date that was happening. And it seemed like people were hungry for that, in terms of like, if people have, that's what we go for, is what people are interested in picking up. We don't I mean, sometimes we do stuff that people aren't interested in picking up, but those aren't what we focus on. So yeah, and then as this year, it seemed like things were kind of on the uptick with the vaccine, and so then concerts started happening again, and so we started doing more of those because that's kind of, you kind of gravitate towards what excites you, and I guess I've always liked the idea of doing stuff for events because it's like that event is happening. They need a poster for it. And so you're really filling a need. And so those are a lot more fun sometimes, I should say, than movie posters where it's like, you're just putting it out. You can put it out this month. You can put it out a year from now. And there is no date, like it's not for a screening or anything. So those I kind of put on the back burner. Sometimes when there's like concert posters that are taking, they're happening right now. So they take precedence, I guess. And it's probably not the best financial move because we make less on them, but you do what kind of your heart likes to do. And right now I really enjoy doing concert posters. So that's what we're doing.
Well, I'm not, it's up to you whether we're allowed to show it. But you sent us a recent work, which is you're doing some incredible gig posters, and you're clearly having a lot of fun with it. But I would say the for me with gig posters that I was always a gig T-shirt collecting person. I was like, I didn't realize as a kid that I would buy a T-shirt at every gig I went to, and I went to so many. It was like all my birthday money and Christmas money would go on gig tickets. I hadn't quite twigged that if I bought fewer T-shirts, I could go to more gigs. It's only something I worked out in post, but I do think there's some of my favorite gigs. I discover that now that they had gig posters, and then I try to find them. Like I got a Rob Jones White Stripes poster for a gig which I went to when I was 15. And it was like, and getting that was like one of my biggest grails. It's not massively valuable or anything, but it's like it's an artifact from a place where you had a great time,
Right.
And obviously I enjoy getting APs if I see a great gig poster and I didn't go to that gig, but the actual connection between, physical item, event. Yeah, it's,
yeah.
So
I think a lot of what we make is stuff that's tied to people's feelings towards that. So even like I often associate a concert poster, like you say, people were like, I proposed to my girlfriend there. It was me and my son's first show. We get all those stories and it's awesome. But we do get them also for even like Halloween. People will be like, I really have all these special memories about seeing Halloween the first time. And so I think I probably don't think about that as much as I probably should, because, those do have a lot of powerful feelings for people. They associate it. It's not just like, oh, I really love the artwork you did for Terminator. I would have got this poster even if it just said, whatever, anything on it. But it is something that has a strong feeling towards that actual movie identity type thing, and that can be as strong as a concert poster. But like you're saying, there's a ton of Terminator posters out there. It's not just mine, and concert posters are a little more of a special thing where there usually aren't multiple posters for one event. It's kind of like one place, one time, this is it. So that kind of sets them apart a little bit of a special ways.
So do you collect gig posters at all yourself?
I used to collect a lot of posters early on, just because that's how I got into doing them in the first place. I was like, man, I really like all these things. And but then my wife, she kind of put the kibosh on it and said, you need to start hanging these posters before you can get more of them. And I was like, nobody can hang all the posters you have. I have flat files full of posters. So that was an impossible task. So now I still do pick up the ones that I really like, but I had to dial it back because I collected movie posters and concert posters. And, now that we have kids and stuff, so now Sarah's like, focus on selling stuff, not buying stuff. So I'm like, okay.
Oh, is that what happens? Oh no, that feels like a warning. I need to get stuff up on the wall in frames, in really nice frames, so that it's something we can't give away.
That's right.
I think obviously the sort of way that alternative movie posters came about in terms of like screen printed stuff comes from gig posters. So it'd be nice to sort of, I know that you're sort of, for my money, we've got Mitch Putnam in the house, and he says the greatest of all time. That sort of that process of those artists, those gig poster artists, becoming artists doing movies and posters, and what it was like for you. What did it feel like doing that transition? Did it seem very logical for you at the time? And was it actually, with gig posters, you there seems to be a lot of free reign on what you do. I've seen your recent the Foo Fighters posters that you've done. Obviously, we were talking about Foo Fighters just before we went live. You've got the one that's the purple tiger, and then you've got one that's I think there's a motorbike one you've got, and then you've got the one with all these planes that's coming about, and you've got sort of a free reign there. Or it seems that way. But then with popular culture, you've got to, even though I suppose with gig posters you're creating a popular culture artifact, but with movie posters you've got to pay homage to things. So what's the difference for you in terms of your process, I guess, and in terms of the beginning when you started doing these, between gig posters and creating movie posters?
Yeah. Oh man, how have things changed? I think the biggest thing is just the audience has grown so much more big more. It's grown exponentially. So before, when I started out doing flyers and posters, they were advertisements. Nobody really cared. There was a time when people would actually put posters on telephone poles and in music stores, and that was like the advertisement. And that was the first and foremost what they were for. And then after that, people would collect them as kind of like memorabilia, but they weren't made to make money, originally. And so when you're doing stuff that, like I was doing 20 posters a week for this, all these venues in Seattle and Portland, and they were just flyers and stuff. And so nobody cared about what they look like, because it's just like, get the names on there, get them out, get the next one. It has to be kind of fun, and you can do whatever you want. And then as it gets bigger, now they're like, this poster is being made for this band, and it's only made as merchandise. It commemorates the show, but it's being sold, and we're printing up 500 of them, 1,000 of them, and it's big money to print those. So they're like, make it a lot better than something you came up with in one day. So you're spending more time on those. And then we transition to movie posters, where again, when we started out, then nobody really cared that much about those. It was more like people are coming to these screenings at the Alamo Draft House in Austin, and it was just like, do something cool, we'll sell them for a little money. But it was more, people weren't coming to the shows for the poster. They were coming because it was an awesome show, and so we would do something to kind of make a little bit extra on the side. And again, then it just started getting bigger, where all these people online started collecting these, and eventually it transitioned to, now you're only selling these online. I mean, there are still shows and events and stuff, but there's a big portion of them that can just be sold just as these Star Wars posters are sold, without having a screening for them. And so it's like, take as much time as you want, because we'll just sell it, not as much time as you want, but you can do a month per poster kind of a thing. And because a lot of people are buying these. And so then that kind of changes your mentality, because you're kind of like, originally you're building a cardboard house, and then eventually you're building a wood house and a brick house. You're making something that has to last longer, has more eyes on it. People are paying more money for it. You're getting paid more for it. And so that really it changes things in good ways, in the fact that it kind of is how people are able to make living, but also it can kind of mess with your mind in terms of just like, you need to still have that spontaneity, the posters that you did originally that people really loved. If you kind of start listening to people too much, you'll kind of let the horse or the buggy drive the horse, or whatever the expression is. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's not a good thing. So you try to get out of that space and just be like, I still want to do this and have it be fun and spontaneous, while at the same time being aware that it's a little bigger of an animal, I guess. So
it sounds like you're sort of saying that obviously there were screenings for these when the sort of AMP things started happening, these alternative movie parties started happening, there would be an event. So it was still almost like it was a gig. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
there was an event.
Exactly.
Now the posters have become the event. And do you think that that's put more pressure on, it sounds like you're saying that's put more pressure on the design being great, because it is the show, the poster is the show?
Yeah, yeah, I would agree exactly with that. I mean, I wouldn't say it puts pressure on everyone because there's so many new artists in the last 20 years that have come in and they're like, this is the way it is. So they're like, the pressure isn't like, oh man, things have really changed. So they're like, I'm ready to do this. We'll go through these revisions. And I mean, one thing I'm not a huge fan of, and as Mitch Putnam is apparently in the audience, he would know this, is that I'm not a huge fan of revisions. Like, I'm like, this is the best poster. And then they'll come back and say, no, the client wants you to change this person, change this thing, not include people pointing guns at each other. And that really wasn't something originally. Nobody ever used to care in the beginning if you had that stuff. I shouldn't say nobody, because Rob Jones is the art director, or, at least on all my Mondo stuff. And so he would say, like, this doesn't look good. But it was more about our personal aesthetics. And now it became more of a, we have to change this for legal reasons. So that was a lot harder, just to wrap your mind around trying to please not just what your design aesthetics were, but actually like following copyright laws and all that type of stuff. That I'm sure a new person, they come in and they're like, this is the rules, so I can follow them because I want this job. Whereas me, I'm like, but I want to do it like we did it 15 years ago. And everyone's like, no, you can't do that. So it's just, me getting old and trying to adjust to that.
Do you find that is that just a sort of a necessary evil, or does it sometimes get in the way in ways that you don't like?
Yes, it often gets in the way of things I don't like. Definitely. It's part of you have a certain process of like, this is how I design a poster. And then when someone kind of sticks a crowbar in there and says, no, we're going to do it this way, you're like, that sets everything off. And for me, it's always like you have a certain fire to get things done, and you have a vision, and you're like excited. And then when things get set off, and this happens in band posters now, 2 days, you're like, or today, not 2 days, but anyway, you'll be working on a poster, you say, this is my vision, you're sending them updates, and then they'll say, no, don't do that, go this way. And you're kind of like, it's like turning a ship, you're like, it can kill the momentum a little bit. And again, this isn't any client's fault. It's just the way that you're used to working. If somebody changes it on you, some people I'm sure are more adapted to adapt. Yeah, I'm using all my good words today. Anyway, some people are more good at making changes quickly, whereas me, you have a vision, and once it kind of gets to the point where you're like, I don't like the way this is looking, then you're kind of like, I gotta get this off my plate, because now it's turned into something that's not. If it doesn't look good to you as the artist, you're like, where's the standard of like, everything is, because this is your vision. And then if it's like, no, it's over here, you're like, I don't even know what's up or down. So it can kind of throw me off. And I think it's probably changed the amount of jobs I've done. It's changed my output of what I can do, because you kind of want to be in a place where you're like, smooth sailing. And sometimes things get a little crazy with feedback. And so then you're like, okay, I'll just do art prints now, go over here. So
we've got a question which I'm going to just expand a little bit.
Yes.
Which says, do you plan on doing another license? It says that you paid for like the Terminator, or was that a one-off experiment? If I can just expand that to, given what we were just talking about, when you've done something sort of off all of your own steam, so to speak, do you feel freer, or do those things that we've just talked about still come into play very much so in your experience?
Yeah, that was a fun experience. It was definitely a learning experience, and we definitely hope to do it again. I know it was a ton of work for Sarah, because she had to ship like 4,000 posters, and usually we ship like 400 posters. So that was a big job, and we're happy about it. But then we did Halloween after that, and we had that released through Gray Matter, and they did all the shipping, and I guess they're still shipping stuff. So anyway, that was, kind of the two different ends of the spectrum. One, you're shipping everything. The other one, you're shipping nothing. And which one would be better, So, and we actually did about the same amount of like money on both of them, which is odd. So I would say it's so much easier to have someone else ship everything, but at the same time, we had a lot more control on the one where we did it ourselves. So you're kind of giving up stuff. Not that Gray Matter was art directing Halloween. I should say we had more control on the shipping. Like we could say, we're going to add these posters, we're going to ship these, and just, you're not, once you're doing it for someone else, if they're doing the shipping, and people are emailing me and saying, we haven't got these. You kind of have to refer everything. So you're giving up that ownership of that relationship with all of your clients that we really like and cherish and value and have built our business on. And so that was kind of like, oh, let's try that out. And I don't know if we'd necessarily jump on that again right away, because we do need to have that connection with the people that buy stuff for us. And we need to have that accountability that we kind of gave up by letting someone else ship everything. So that's just talking about the shipping aspect. I know your question is probably more like the design process. And for that, Terminator was probably the same as any type of poster I've done for like Spoke Art or Alamo or Gray Matter or Bottleneck, where it was I had to get feedback from them. So they had the rights to these people and all these properties. And originally I kind of misunderstood the rights. So I turned in a poster, and it is nicer when you have someone like the Mondo people, you turn it into them, they go to the properties, and the properties people, they're talking about all that stuff. And then you kind of just get to wait, and then they come back and at least in my experience, they often would fight on our behalf and say, no, we really need to have this in here. It's really important to have this credit box. It's really important to have this character. And so then that's a lot. It's nice. It's kind of like having a lawyer where you're not the one that's being the bad guy. You're just kind of turning in the art, and then they fight for it to get it approved. Whereas with Terminator, I was kind of the one that had to deal with directly with the rights holders. And so then there was a lot of back and forths, but there were positive aspects to it. I think the biggest hurdle was the shipping. Was just, we don't have a huge team here, so it was just shipping 4,000 posters. So.
Doesn't sound too hard.
No, it was a weekend.
If I could just, if I can move it, the key theme that we've been bringing up throughout the weekend is composition. And you can expand that a little bit to concept, I suppose, but composition as and how artists approach it when they're coming up with a poster, and how they sort of manage it going through that process, and what composition means to them and why it's important, and what good composition should do. So if we go in terms of when you start to create a poster, are you what is your process? Is it, for example, pen and paper, or is it straight to the computer? What is where does the sort of the seed, does the seed happen?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question, because I just started a poster recently that was for an illustration for my old boss that I worked in Vermont. And so then they were like, we want you to do this poster. And because of the timeline, I'm like, I don't have time to send sketches and do all this sort of pen and paper stuff, because it's just not that. I mean, it's a very fun thing, but it's not something that we have enough time to go back and forth on. So I just started drawing last night, and now it's just all digital. And whereas if a poster, even like Foo Fighters or Fish or movie posters, it's best if you can start with like sketches and you're doing thumbnails and stuff like that, because you're kind of getting the idea of what you can, have envisioned in your own mind. Whereas something like this, the big project that I have coming up, is all like, make sure it has all these different, different pieces on it. And they're kind of sending me all the stuff they want to include. So then you're like, I guess I should just start drawing these different pieces. And then compositionally, like at the end, I'll put them all together and make it work. And so it's just two different approaches. And I think if you're able to, do your thumbnails and your rough sketches, and whenever you can draw stuff by hand and then scan it in and ink that, those have a little better of a look, I think, because it's more like it's coming directly from you. Whereas if you're relying on technology, it has a certain look for that. And so mine is usually a mix of both. It just depends on deadline and stuff. So right now, I'm doing this one 100% digitally. But if I could, and if the budget was unlimited and the time was unlimited, I would prefer to do stuff by hand, use a light table and kind of go and say, let's piece things all together this way. And I think you'd get a better piece out of it. But nowadays, the turnarounds are just like, do it faster.
And just as sort of like a side question there, given what you were talking about, and you're doing this, and I'm just imagining your stickers because you do so much work with stickers, and I covered my suitcase in your stickers. Really love them. Is that
Nice?
Is that sort of vignettes that you create, and those sort of and crazy characters and obviously some pop culture characters as well? Does that stem from that kind of process that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so, because I mean, I don't even know how like at the beginning, I suppose I was just doing a big poster where they say, draw something 18 by 24. So you draw it and you're like, everything is one piece. And I have done a lot of posters like that. But then people, just because of the way that I like to design stuff, it has a lot of little pieces. And people be like, I really like this little thing. And I'm like, yeah, I wish I had like just that little thing, because even I would be like, I really like this character. I wish I had just a sticker of that. And so then it just started making me think, well, what if I do, if just drawing these things compositionally, if you have more of them in the background that they're not being shown, you're like, it'd be fun to do like a handbill or a sticker so that people can appreciate, because there's nothing worse than, and I have done this, where you draw like a whole figure and then you put him into a piece, and then all of a sudden everything's covering him up, and then you see like, the top 1/4 of his body, and you're like, but there's so much more that went into this, and you hate the fact that at the end of the day, no one's going to see it. So I think that's kind of where the idea for me of stickers and handbills, I'm like, well, double dip, where basically you sell your poster, and then if you can turn around and do it again and people enjoy it, I don't think there's usually a harm in it, unless it's like huge copyright issues. Then there's a little bit of a harm in it. If you're like, I'm going to take all my Star Wars figures, and then you might get a phone call. So
I'm just going to try and get some of these questions in. I've got Timmy asking, what's the origin of the name Coalface Killer?
Oh, well, thank you, Timmy. I actually started using that in college, and I was on some message board, and back in the 2000 era, that everything online was message boards. You'd never use your real name for anything, or not everything was, pseudonyms or screen names or whatever. And now you see more people just using their regular names. But back then it was cool to have a fake name. And so then I was like, oh, I'll just make one up, and that's kind of where it came from. It was just a made up thing that was just, and now you stick with it and you're like, this is, part of my identity is this Coalface Killer.
And now you're sort of beholden to it. And
exactly.
I thought it might be like a secret hip hop project you once had.
Exactly. No, it's not. It should. I'll start one up and everyone will be like, oh. It is funny though, because if you like Google Coalface Killer, it's like mine's the only hit. And I'm like, I thought I had taken it from something, but whatever I was inspired by, I guess, has kind of gone away.
Speaking from working at the Coalface, someone's asked, do you ever have burnout when you're working on projects?
I do, yeah. And I think that's more and more as you get older, it's important to kind of take some time away and just say, okay, I'm going to do something completely unrelated to what I'm doing, so that I can just kind of refresh that well that you're going to go to. Because it was funny, because I used to always get asked in interviews way back when I did interviews is like, where do you get your ideas from? And you're always like, that's such a random idea. It's kind of a cliche, funny idea of our question. Because you're like, just ideas just come. It's just, that's your ideas, where do thoughts come from? But now in more recent years, when you find yourself doing stuff and you're kind of going back to the cliche gig posters, they're like, okay, we'll do the mushrooms or the spacemen skeletons and all this stuff. You're like, these are pretty cliche ideas. Like, I need new ideas. And you're like, where do I get my ideas from? And so it is important to get out there and live a life that inspires you to have ideas, and whatever that entails, instead of just kind of doing work. So I do get burnout, and I'm trying to be a better person at like getting out and doing stuff. We did get some birds recently, some big birds, and we're kind of building like a little shed over there for them. And that's been a lot of fun. So I don't know if they have emus in London, but
I've seen the videos, and we've seen the videos on Instagram, and you set one to Jurassic Park, and I was like, oh, this is my jam.
Yeah, so I need to do a poster with those in it soon. But
what, with emus or with dinosaurs?
either both of them, I suppose. But yeah,
You'll
emus
start up the
especially.
Jurassic Park Tyler Stout rumor again.
Yeah, exactly. But instead of dinosaurs, it'll just be emus. All the
That would be
Jurassic
great.
Park.
Yeah. I would buy that. Someone
Yeah.
said, has anyone ever told Tyler he has a really soothing John Malkovich-esque voice?
Oh, well, that's good. I was always told I kind of had a little bit of a high pitched voice, so I was self-conscious of it. But I can't change my voice.
I think you have there's a calming influence to it.
Oh, good.
Okay, I think it might be sort of an extension of the question about getting burnout. Has it contributed at all? Has deadline working ever sort of contributed to the burnout aspect of things? I may have misread that question, but it's still a good question, so I'm going to ask it.
Yeah, it is. It's a catch-22 type thing where you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. Where basically I work best by deadlines. So all my stuff originally, that's how I kind of started doing posters. That people would say, I need stuff every week. We need it Mondays. We need Fridays. We need these things. And that's how you're like, okay, good or bad, this thing is going out. It's going out. We're always doing posters. And you didn't even have time to kind of look back and say, man, that poster really was terrible, because you're already on the next thing. And so it really motivates you and it drives your portfolio, your experience, your career, all that sort of stuff. And then when you suddenly have the luxury, or gradually, as in our case, of being like, no, take more time on this, really do your best job, then you're going to start second your guess yourself. You're going to start doing multiple versions of the poster. You're going to kind of go a little bit crazy because you're just like, what is the best? I have more time. And so I've told some people that I've worked with that kind of want me to meet deadlines and stuff, or want work out of me. I said, you really need to give me a deadline, because that's what I work by. Is I need to know that there is a drop dead date. And the worst thing that can happen is when you do something and you're like, okay, here it is for the deadline. And then they say, actually, we extended the deadline another month. You have more time to work on this. And then the bottom just falls out of your whole motivation, where you're like, oh man, I need to get things done to move on. And that moving forward, that sense of accomplishment, you need all that to kind of motivate you. Maybe people don't. I need it. So that's what drives me, is having a beginning, a middle, and an end, and just having those successful projects completed. It drives you to be like, that felt really good, I'm going to go to the next one. But open-ended projects, and projects of like, we want you to do this, but take as much time as you want, or whenever you get a chance to it, those will never get done, because I'll always put it on the top of the pile, or whatever the pile, wherever if you're taking stuff off the bottom of the pile, whatever it is, the stuff that gets done first is the stuff that they say, we need this in 2 weeks. We need this in 2 weeks. So, plus I'm like, if you need it in 2 weeks, your expectations are like right here. They're like, whatever it is, we need it. And so you're like, I can just do whatever. Whereas if they say, we need this in 3 months, do the best job you can, you're like, man, expectations are pretty high on that. And so it's just things that mess with your mind. Like as a poster artist, you're kind of like, you need to be kind of relaxed and be like, this isn't a big deal. And at least I do. That's how I work best, is just being relaxed and saying, this is just for fun. This is just do something cool. And you don't have to knock it out of the park every time. You can just do something that completes the job, and you move on to the next one. And then at the end of the year, or at the end of your life, whichever happens first, you can look back and be like, oh, this is, these posters, these are the winners. It's like doing stickers. You're like, these, you did 20 and these 5 are awesome. But it's not like those 5 were the ones you're like, I'm going to make 5 awesome stickers. You tried to make all 20 of them awesome, and just 5 of them happen to be awesome.
It's a numbers
game. And that's
game,
kind of
right?
how posters are as well. So
it's kind of like a numbers game, right? When in my band manager would say, like, you just need to keep writing.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
You were talking about sort of like, okay, when you get to finish your poster and you're like, okay, that's good, I feel good. What is the most sort of fulfilling, or the most rewarding and enjoyable part of, well, I suppose they might be 2 separate things, but your job and your actual poster process? What's the most fulfilling aspect of either or both of those?
Yeah. That's hard. I mean, because it's a business, you're like, what is the most fulfilling? Like you'd say like, oh, the most fulfilling is being able to provide for your family and have all that sort of stuff. But the times where I'm really like coming along and clicking is kind of when you're in your own world. It's late at night and you're just drawing something and you're kind of right in the middle of it and you're like grooving on it. You're like, this is really good. I'm happy with this. And so it's neither the beginning where you're kind of like, am I really going to screw this up? This is a lot of pressure. I'm nervous. This isn't going to turn out. And at the end, when you're like, great, this is done. Now we have to sell it. I got 2 more projects coming in. I got to work on all those. It's neither of those. Those I would say aren't necessarily my favorites. My favorite is when you're kind of like right in the middle of it and you're kind of like, loving what's happening and you're like, this is really coming along nicely. You're excited about it. You're having fun. You're moving pieces around. And that's when I'm like, oh, this is really fun. And the problem is that I always like to stay in that zone. So I'm always like taking on more work and I don't get to really enjoy the sense of completion of like, we just did a huge poster race. Like my least favorite day is usually the day we sell posters, because that's when all that pressure comes in. You're dealing with like money, which I don't like to deal with. And so all that stuff is like, I get really depressed on those days, which is weird because you think that's the fun, like that's the whole culmination of every point of all this. But it really, for me, I like just the making part. That's where I'm like, if I could just be stuck in that and you're having fun and you're not like, repeating yourself or like coming up against a blank wall. I guess that's when I enjoy myself the most. It's right in the middle of a project when it's coming along well. But sometimes you're in the middle of a project that's not coming along well, and that's the worst time of all. You're really not loving life.
You were talking about when you're like in the zone and stuff. Do you find that in those moments that hours pass by and you're like, oh, and it's not the time you thought it was?
It is. I know it. It's ridiculous. Like right now, my work schedule is, I usually get up around noon and then I kind of hang out with my family. We have projects around, here that we work on. My kids, are loving summer and stuff. So then we do stuff. And then like towards later in the afternoon, I'll start working, have dinner with the family and stuff. And then I like to stay up till about 6 or 7 in the morning working, because nobody's like coming into my office being like, we got to do this, do this. I don't get a ton of emails that distract me and stuff. And I can just, work in there and watch, my TV shows or whatever, and just kind of zone out. And you, like you say, you'll be like, I got plenty of time. It's midnight. And then all of a sudden it's 6 a.m. and you're like still like wired because you're having fun, but you're like, I need to go to work, or the next day I'm going to be kind of like screwed and stuff. So yeah, it's a weird schedule. I'm sure it's shortening my life considerably. Like my heart's like, you're not going to live to be 80.
I hope you live a long. I hope you live a long lifetime. I'll just be
I know it's quality over quantity. So,
well, you've got Roger Daltrey saying, "I hope I die before I get old," but he is old now. So
right, yeah, exactly. Now,
Max Keller asks, "Are you going to?" So there's some questions about obviously about specific pieces. So we'll take some of those. Are you going to do any more band pieces like Manchester, like from Manchester in the future, like you did for you did the Joy Division piece, right? Someone said would love to see Liverpool Beatles, for example.
Yeah.
Is that something that appeals to you?
Yeah. Hey, Max. I know him. Yeah, I would like to. It's just a matter of time and deadlines. And it's different when I once got asked to do a really cool piece for Nirvana, which I turned down because I was like, I'm not, I wasn't doing posters when Nirvana was around. So it's harder for me. I did do a Jimi Hendrix poster, which I really enjoed, and Joy Division and stuff like that.
I've got that in the portfolio at the moment. It's not mine.
Oh yeah,
but I did buy it for someone. But yeah, it's a gorgeous piece.
Yeah,
absolutely love that poster. And that was the estate, right? That was the Jimi Hendrix estate who wanted to work with.
That was cool. Yeah. That was fun. And so it's just if you had all the time in the world and all the, I just could sit back. I think a person really has to sit back and say, what do I want to do with my time? And if I was like, I want to just do movie posters, which I probably should sit back and say that, because they probably are the most like financially, like, you can make more money on those. But I kind of I started off doing concert posters. I like doing concert posters. And so then people will come along and have these fun other projects. And you're like, yeah, I'll get to that after I get these concert posters all done. Then you'll work all summer on these concert posters, making $2,500 a pop. I mean, not a huge amount. If you're spending 2 weeks on that, that would be not a huge income. So you're like, I'm making not great money, but it's okay. So then you're making those. And then the fall comes and you're like, I'm a little bit in debt. I got kids that I'm paying for their school stuff. So then you'll do like a movie thing to try to make, the money that you can to just provide for your family. And things are kind of driven by like need. And so those older movie or music things, they, as much as I would like to, they currently haven't been falling into my like weird schedule. Like in the summer we do concert posters, and then you start doing art prints, and then you move into some movie posters, and then it's back to sticker packs and handbills, and then concert posters. You're like, where do you I had a lot of fun with that Jimi Hendrix one and that Joy Division one, and I don't know why I just haven't clicked with continuing to do those. It just didn't become the thing that I did. And so I'm not going to say I won't do them in the future, of course, but right now you follow a schedule in your own mind.
So you have a seasonality to your work, which is dependent on, you've got to manage the rate of income, obviously.
I think so. Yeah, I feel like that's true.
We've got some people asking, and you can flat out refuse to answer this. There's people asking about the Mad Max poster. Obviously, people were quite looking forward to that. Is that something that will be something that's happening, in the near future, or?
Yeah,
or you don't have to stipulate a date. It's just
I know. I'm in touch with Ken at Spoke Art, and we want to make it happen. We're going to make it happen. It's just when these concert posters kind of came up, then in the theaters kind of openings and closings, and there's just been some changes in the world. And so we need to, it wasn't quite finished when they kind of like put it on hold. And so now I just need to kind of like blow the dust off all that stuff and say, okay, now we can do it again. So it's totally going to happen. I know it's going to happen, but I could die tomorrow. And if I did, it will not happen.
Please don't. We need to get away from this is like, we have like, sort of national treasures that you want to protect at all costs. And one would, for the UK would be David Attenborough. Now, from what you're saying, I'm like, we must protect Tyler Stout.
Until that poster comes out, right?
No, for all time. Any chance of you releasing more cold cuts? I loved some of those. I've got the Raptor one to put in a Jurassic Park frame.
Oh, nice. Well, I sure appreciate that, because that was a lot of fun. And so I got one of these cool little lasers, and I was just cutting stuff like crazy, and I was having a blast. And apparently these lasers have like a certain lifespan. So I'm like, going along, and I'm not real great at techie stuff, so I don't know if I used it more than I should or whatever. But all of a sudden the laser was like, no, I'm not going to cut anymore. I'm like, oh, what happened? So anyway, we had a lot of fun with it. We definitely want to do it again. We just need to get our next laser up and running. And so I'm in talks with the people that I got it from, and I want to make it happen again. But again, it's just, you can be like focused on your laser. And the nice thing, that whole project actually came out of all of my band posters canceling back when the COVID first hit. And so then you're like, what do I do with my time? Well, I'll get this laser, we'll do these cuts, and you kind of had all the time in the world. But now that concert post still started up again, then you're like, okay, that type of stuff, takes a little bit of a back seat. And so I do need to get that guy up and running again. It was a lot of fun, and I'd love to do it again. But I'm looking at getting a more powerful laser that will do like.
Is this the kind of like thing that would split Bond in half?
Exactly. Something like that, real genius where it kind of burns through all the stuff. So
people are saying, what a great guy, what a great down to earth guy. This is great viewing, which is nice. Thank you. And thank you. Yeah. We've got, someone did mention about that there was perhaps another variant of Halloween that may, well, obviously next month is October. I don't know, but you'd assume that if there was, given that next month is October.
Yes, I think you're right. It is October. And so, they announced it from the very beginning because they didn't want people to think that they were going to be, I see they as in like the royal they, but that includes me. we didn't want people to think we were reprinting it like, oh, due to popular demand, we're printing a third edition. So the plan was always to have a glow in the dark version, and that was released in October because this other one was released before that. So that's still the plan. Like all good plans, it could happen. I think they're planning on it. I know we want to wrap up the shipping on these Halloweens. So I'm going to, if people ever have shipping issues, I always encourage them to just email me and let me know, and we'll get to the bottom of it. So I know that's the plan, but I won't have any of those for sale, and it's just all Gray Matters thing. But it'll be fun, I think.
Cool. Someone, and it might be. I'll share a little tidbit from my opening communication to asking you to be here. It's Barry McCrogan says, "Does Tyler feel the pressure of being an icon in the AMP scene?" And I'll just say is that when I opened my email to Tyler, I said, "Hi Tyler. First of all, you're a pop culture icon. Right, now we've got that out of the way." And then started writing. I don't know that, but yeah. Do you feel a certain sense of your place within all of this? And are there any pressures that come from that?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I enjoy nice words, I don't necessarily believe that. So it's good. I mean, if people say that, and after I die, which I don't know why I always keep talking about dying, but anyway,
triggering me,
it's
honestly.
Just something I guess. Wait. Anyway, after I'm departed from this realm, I think it's great if people look back and say, oh, this person did this and this was a neat thing. But hearing it while you're kind of alive and you're like, I'm still trying to do that work. I mean, I have people that I look up to, and at certain points you'll be like, I really like this director. And then they start putting out like really subpar work or stuff that you're like, seems rushed. And same with artists and stuff. Then you're kind of like, oh man, they've really lost it. They used to have something and now they lost it. And so I don't want to be that person, but I think we all probably, I mean, it's probably inevitable. Maybe it's already happened, but I don't tend to listen to too much to like chatter about people saying this or that, because you're like, I don't want it to get into my head that I mean, I'm always one poster away from just being like, that guy did a really bad poster for this thing. And so there is a pressure to make sure you're trying to not fall flat on your face when everyone's watching you. But at the same time, you want to have that freedom to fall on your face, because you're like, that's how we grow as individuals, and try new things and stuff. And we're going to print on this kind of paper. We're going to do all of this kind of, style or whatever. And you have to be free to kind of do that. And I think, looking at yourself as any type of important person is not a good way to free up your mind to have that creativity. So Sarah handles most of my emails. I'm pretty bad about that. I'm not huge on the social media stuff. So I just try to, I do best when I'm kind of like, don't have any, I'm like a cockroach. I do my best work when there's no light shining on me. I think,
but I suppose another question by extension of that is, do you, as I say, in terms of having a sense of your, do you feel quite, you listen to some musicians and they talk about feeling sort of blessed, to get where they are and to be earning, a living off of doing what they love, and in turn, making other people feel good by providing them with something that they enjoy. Does that enter your mind at all?
Absolutely. We are definitely thankful every day that we can do this, because, anyone could be like a great artist, and then you just start working at a different job and you're working in healthcare or building or something like that. And then you're like, you might have these talents, but because you couldn't make a living at it, you just have to do the other thing. And so then you never get your work seen. You don't get to kind of scratch that itch of things that you like to do. And so I feel incredibly blessed to be able to do this and make a living off of it. So it is a catch-22 of like, you want to interact with people, not, I don't know, reward, but you want to, give back to people that have given, because, money is hard earned. So then when people give that to you, you want to make sure they're getting,
Sure.
that appreciation back. And not take it for granted. And we certainly, hopefully, don't take it for granted. We don't want to be like blasé about people saying, oh, we love your stuff and stuff. It's just, it's a balance of being like, we are appreciative, and we certainly take advantage of the fact that we can sell stuff, which is why we keep selling stuff. And at the same time, you want to try to stay grounded and being like, I still, have to change poopy diapers and do stuff like that, that you're just like, this is a normal life. We're still making house payments and
keeps you grounded,
fixing cars. Yeah. So you're just like, yeah, it does.
There's people asking if you, I think one person put a comment saying, would you do any more Tarantino posters? And subsequently loads of people saying, please, basically.
Yeah.
Is that something that is that something you'd like to do more of?
Yes.
In the future.
Yeah.
Well, that's your answer. But you can elaborate on it. But I'm just saying, I don't want to pressure you to put any meat on the bones there. But yes, you would. Is any particular movies that would be in that you're particularly fond of, that would be like, sort of up there for you, and not just Tarantino, but generally, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I have a very completionist type, like when people will email me and say, you should do a poster for this one, I'm always saying that's my hope, as I hope, but realistically we won't be able to do them for all of them. But Tarantino specifically, because we've done some fun ones for him, and I've done enough, however many we've done, 3 or anyway, you kind of think it would be fun to do them all, and you kind of have a completionist attitude of like, I want to complete this whole set, because that's, to me, worth more or more fulfilling, because you're like, that's now a goal. You started here. You don't have to necessarily do them chronologically, but you have the whole thing as like something, and this is your whole take on it. And that is probably, I think, the only director that I'm like, I'd like to do one for every poster, or for every movie he's done. I guess the other one would be Marvel. We've had a lot of fun with those, and at some point you kind of in the back of your mind say, I'd like to do a poster for every Marvel movie up until Endgame or whatever, just because you're like, some of the ones after that, just like Pixar, eventually it starts to go down.
But I don't know. I've heard that Shang-Chi is very, very, very good from numerous artists. I haven't been able to, it came out on Friday. I haven't been able to see it because I've been doing this. I will try and see it tomorrow, if I recover in time. Well, what you just said there, we've had Matt Ferguson on quite a bit this weekend, and he I asked him if in terms of, not necessarily about, you're talking about being completionist, I asked him if he felt like, because he got to do a Transformers poster this year, and he's a massive Transformers poster, massive Transformers fan, whether he felt like a collector, So maybe you're someone who's obviously collected stuff in the past of other people's stuff, or collected toys and whatever, and now that you're actually creating this ephemera, like actually collecting stuff, I want to, it's the ticking things off the list and stuff. Do you feel like a bit of a collector in some respects?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my office is filled with stuff that I've collected over the years, and you're always still kind of like, it's just, it's weird because you're making stuff that's collectible. And I don't know if I guess I probably have the biggest Tyler Stout collection of most collectors, just because
you'd hope, wouldn't you?
And I tend to hold on to that, but I don't necessarily, the stuff that I collect is probably different than that. I collect a lot of different types of books and some toys and some just random stuff that I put my money into and think, oh, this is cool. And then everyone was like, why are you getting this? I collect a lot of Alien stuff and a lot of Carpenter, all of these things that I enjoy picking up and having. So I am a collector, but as you get older, you're kind of like, what should I focus on? I need to focus on certain things as opposed to just buying everything that I'm like, you kind of have to make sure you're not overextending, especially financially. I can only do so much.
I think it'd be good to talk about some of your sort of influences so that people know where some of this stuff comes from. Obviously, you're influenced massively by the actual film that you're doing and stuff, and obviously gig posters. But like we talk about artists and designers and stuff, and of art. If you could tell us a bit about what you're influenced by, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard to kind of spontaneously kind of come up with things where you're like, this is the stuff that really inspires me, because it changes so much. Like, people I have been asked, like, what inspires you and stuff, and you think, what does inspire me? Because you kind of look around, and you're inspired by like memories. You're inspired by growing up in the 80s as I did, and you're like, this is like, kids would tell me when they saw like Big Trouble in Little China, and they would describe the whole plot to me, and I'm like, this sounds like the most amazing, terrifying movie I've ever heard of, and it would be years before you actually see the movie, and then you'd be like, it wasn't, now it's clearly more of a comedy, but in your mind you have this whole like, this is something amazing, and it is still obviously amazing, but those types of things, so you can kind of get so much inspiration from so many different things, like just cereal boxes that used to be that you just look at and be like, this artwork is amazing, the comics that my kids still read, that you're just like, this is really cool stuff. And so it's hard to just say like, we have like Mobius and those type of people that you're like, this is an incredible artist, I can get inspired by him, but it's only one person. So you can't just be like, I'm only going to be inspired by this guy, because then everything will just be like looking like that guy's stuff or a bad ripoff of it. So everything kind of goes through your whole mind and kind of gets chewed up, and then, it comes out in your whole style of what you're able to do, and so I guess aesthetically, I have tons, all these books and stuff, and it's just stuff you've picked up and read over the years. And it's hard to take a look at any one and say, this was the guy that really inspired me, like 80s TV, 1980s television, or 1990s, movies or something. All of these things you're kind of constantly taking in, and then just kind of turns out into the person that you are and the aesthetic that you like. And so I guess if you're going to list like poster artists of people that have inspired me, or kind of driven me to kind of compete with, or not that I'm competing with anyone, but still you're kind of like, you have Rob Jones, who's given me so much poster advice, just on like, maybe if we did this variant, maybe number it this way, maybe consider doing a stamp, stuff where he didn't have to do that. He kind of came alongside a young person, and he's young as well, as young as me. We're both in our mid 40s, early 50s. So anyway, he kind of gave me all this advice early on, and that type of stuff is inspiring, because you're like, someone's telling you how to do something, giving you ideas. And, I had, Jay Ryan is another person, and Dan Jetka. I've liked those guys forever, and I collect their stuff. And so these people that are kind of like, towers in your mind that you're like, I want to be kind of like them. They are my inspiration, just how they handle themselves. Those are the type of people. Usually it's people older than me, because younger people, you're kind of like, here's the up and comers. I try to like pick up on new people and follow new people and just be more attentive to that. But it's hard to, I'm sure I do really like some of those new ones. It's just, it takes time. People have to kind of develop a portfolio of like work where you're like, I'm seeing this guy's work a lot, man. This guy's really doing amazing stuff, Barry Blankenship's just one that comes to mind, where he's younger than me, and I'm like, this guy reminds me a lot of the stuff that I was doing when I was his age, and he's younger than me. So, but anyway, someone that you're like, this guy's inspiring me just because he's doing cool work, he's having fun with it, he's printing his own stuff, which even I don't do, and so it's just as fun to watch these new up and comers that are like inspiring.
There's some questions here about sort of specific posters that you've released, and sort of whether you can shed some light on sort of your process for them. Obviously, I know you've got quite a portfolio, so if you can distinctly remember those, then thank you. But the Remember the Alamo first edition is saying that it's a poster that means a lot to the Green Yeti, which is a very meaningful comment delivered by someone with a joke name. But the Alamo, can you basically share some any thoughts on creating that poster?
Yeah. That was the brainchild, of course, of Rob Jones. I'll probably mention him in a lot in every interview, just because, he kind of has a vision, and I'm like, oh, I can work with someone like that. So he's easy to kind of work with when he has all these amazing ideas. And he was like, what if we kind of take this classic poster for John Wayne's, like the Alamo poster? That's an actual like theatrical poster movie type thing. And he said, we're going to take that poster, and instead, because, that movie's called The Alamo, and we're talking about the Alamo Draft House, so there's like a connection there. And then we're just going to make these two kind of the good and the bad side, and who do we put on the bad side, who do we put on the good side, and kind of come up with all these fun properties of just like making something that's fun, that has a lot of like Easter eggs. We're just hiding a ton of stuff in there, and just do it just to do something fun. And so he was kind of the ones that he would throw a whole list of like, throw this person in there, throw that person. Some people I hadn't even heard of. And so I couldn't even go through that list right now and be like, okay, I'm going to.
Don't worry, I won't expect you to remember them all off the top of your head. That would be very, very cruel.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was just something that he was like, let's do this. And Tim League was like, let's do it. And so it was just have fun with it. And again, I think the first edition, and maybe all the editions, they weren't huge editions. It was like 300, which in this day and age would be a small edition, but at that time was a big edition. And so we were just like, let's do something fun, see if we can sell this much, and did a fun thing that you don't see as much these days. At least I don't do them, I shouldn't say, because I don't know if people are doing them and having fun with them. But it was just a fun thing that I did, and it hasn't popped up to do that again. And if it has, it's just hasn't been the right time, I guess.
Sure. Somebody asked about the process with, I believe it was with Criterion on doing Repo Man.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of story there that you might be able to share on Repo Man?
Yeah. Let me try to censor it to make everybody kind of like look good in that story. Let's see.
I don't know that I say, if we can skip over questions. I'm trying to be a good filter. Not that there's
it was a good
untoward in the I'm just trying to be
No, totally fine. I was just joking, because again, I worked with Rob Jones. He came to me and was like, hey, let's do he basically was tasked by Criterion, like, can you come up with a cool design for Repo Man? And that was his project. They didn't come to me at all. So then he was kind of outsourcing it to artists. So it was me and Jay Shaw. And then it was like, and him, we were all kind of submitting ideas. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And so then they were like, hey, this thing's coming up soon. You want to do some ideas for it? So I did some ideas. Rob did some ideas. Jay did some ideas. And they ended up going with Jay's for the cover. Mine was on the inside of it. And Rob, I know, had he designs all the other inside stuff. So it was like a multi-tiered, it was all of us working together. But again, everybody was answerable to Rob, not Criterion. I didn't work with them. I just worked with Rob. So
people talk quite fondly. I mean, in the UK, we've got when you talk about with various artists in the UK, they'll be working with someone like Matt Ferguson as a sort of art director, and they all sort of I suppose maybe sort of a slightly love-hate relationship, but like truly valuing the guidance that's given. And it sounds like that's what you got from Rob. You say that I mean, someone I've loved from all his White Stripe stuff, and even when I got into Mondo, I hadn't put the two together. I didn't know. I know that might sound very silly, but for a while I didn't know that the two were connected because I didn't dig deep enough. But so as a mentor, obviously, and you said he's an influence to you. So if you could tell us a bit more about the kind of collaboration process that you've had with someone like Rob Jones, that would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't worked together in a while just because, paths always kind of, go your separate ways, and we kind of grow up and try stuff on your own and stuff. But I was just talking to him yesterday, and so we still stay in pretty good contact. He's always recommending, check this movie out, check that movie out. And I mean, he reminds me, if you've ever, seen interviews or talked to him or anything, he's a lot like you would imagine, like Quentin Tarantino, who has all this information just constantly, just like, and Rob has that information in his brain where he can reference anything, and you're just getting lost in the sheer amount of information that he's just kind of flooding you with, and it just is at his fingertips that he can just recall all this stuff that I'm like, I can't do that. So he's just a wealth of information, and he's always been very, he's like, let's bring in this artist, we'll be doing something. He's like, well, let's bring in this artist, contact, Casey about doing some type, use his type on this. And he's always looking for opportunities to kind of help other people, which I admire that in an industry that kind of can be like, what can I do for myself? He's very selfless. And so there's a lot to admire about him. He's always been very kind. When I flew out to Alamo, I think both times I stayed at his house, and so he's just been a real good guy. I don't have any complaints about him. I mean, the only thing, and this is with anybody, is that I don't enjoy talking on the phone at all with clients.
I understand he's a phone guy, and maybe quite late with his phone calls is what I've heard.
Yeah, and more than that, even though I enjoy it because you're kind of like, listening to all this information, I just need to have a written, I need to have things written down because I am a really slow thinker. And so, I mean, I just can't, it takes me, I'm always the last to get any joke. I'm just like, like what? And so, he's going through all this stuff. I need a detailed list of all the stuff that people need, because otherwise I miss so much stuff. So I'm always like taking notes furiously when we're talking, and, a lot of stuff he'll be like, remember when I said that? And I'm like, no, I don't remember that. So I just need things. If it's a job, it needs to be written down, because otherwise I'm going to forget everything. And people will say, I need to talk to you on the phone about this. And I'm like, I can't work with you. If phone is a critical part of this relationship, then this job is not going to work, because I think everything can be accomplished by email. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way most of my jobs are.
There's a lot of sort of relating, and knowing nods. I really struggle sometimes with, ironically, I struggle with organizing things. So sometimes I have to do a complete brain dump in terms of key is writing things down. So like, these are the things that need doing. We've got some more questions in. Mitch Putnam is still here and says Rob is the best. I'd say we'd love to have him on the convention, because I've got a real admiration for his style, and also what he adds to other people's stuff. I would love to have a chat with him and pick that brain that you're saying is so full of a wealth of information. And people are now asking for Rob Jones. We will try. Being a huge Luke Barry, being a huge Edgar Wright fan, and someone who absolutely adores your Spaced and Shaun of the Dead work, do you have a desire to finish off that? You said you're a completionist. Is do you want to do Hot Fuzz and World's End? Is that something that's of appeal?
Yeah, that is another one that I have long wanted to do. So hopefully that can happen. It is a little bit of a weird place, because we actually did do a poster for Hot Fuzz, but it was Hot Fuzztival. So it has the characters on it, but like anyone would say this is more of like a festival poster that starred those guys as kind of but it also had like James Caan and all these other guys on there, the poster, that clearly aren't in the movie, because there was like all the cop movies, so it was showing all these ones. And so it would be fun to kind of go back and just do like a proper Shaun of the Dead type poster for Hot Fuzz and World's End, and do that. That would be totally perfect. I'd love that. So hopefully.
I was actually in Wales where Hot Fuzz is, the majority of Hot Fuzz is filmed, a few weeks ago, and when I got there, I hadn't twigged yet. I hadn't realised yet that's where I was. Where I was going, and then I was like, hold on. It's like, because it's one of the smallest cities in the country, because it's a very small city. It's a very small place, but it technically has a cathedral. So it's anyway. and so me and my dad were just running around geeking out and taking photos. Anyway, it's if you ever come to you've been to the UK before, right? If you I think it's
I've been to Scotland. Scotland. Yeah.
Yeah, the people are nicer there anyway, probably. But yeah, Wales is quite a fun place to go, given that given that that's where basically the whole thing is a Hot Fuzz film set.
That'd be fun.
Has Tyler ever thought about releasing an art book with all the movie posters? I mean, this is obviously there's a great deal in the Mondo art book, but it would be great to see, and not just your movie posters, but the gig posters as well. You know, just a collection of your portfolio, because it's so much more than just what you've done in movies. Is that something that's sort of? I know that can be a difficult process in terms of getting sign off, for example, to like, can I print this in a different way, please? Is that okay and stuff? But is that something you'd like to do?
It is. Yeah, I'd love to do it, but it just is. It is a real process, because you're like, I want to do the best job I can on a book, because I don't know how many books I would have in me, like one book. And so you're like, I want to do a really good job on it, and that means you have to take time to sit down and say, I'm not going to do any other projects, you know. So all the projects that you've taken on and all the commitments you've made, you have to say, I need to take 3 months or whatever and not do any of those and just work on this. And so it's kind of like a gallery show where people are like, can you do a bunch of posters for this gallery show? And you're like, well, you're kind of like, you do a poster and then you sell it and you make that money and then you do the poster. And the idea of doing like 6 posters and having them all completed and not selling any of them until the show, you really have to have like a huge financial storage that you're kind of like eating off of and stuff. And so we just, you know, it'd be great to do it, but so I will do a book eventually, or, you know, my descendants will, but we'll see. I'd love to do it. And that's kind of like one of those things that you're like, maybe if I was in a horrible accident, I couldn't draw anymore, but you're like, you can still click a mouse and you're like, okay, I can do this. Then that would be a perfect opportunity, you know, knock on wood, to do a book. So you have to be kind of like in a good space, or at least good at like setting things apart and saying, okay, I'm not going to put out anything for 3 months, or I'm going to get caught up on everything. And now I'm going to sit here and work on all this layout. And the other thing is with a poster, I mean, a lot of the posters that I really enjoy, the books, I should say, have actual photographs of the posters and not just a digital reproduction. And so, that's going to be a tricky one, because a lot of our stuff, you know, we have to have them either professionally photographed or do that ourselves and stuff. It's not something you could put all the digital files in there and then it would look a certain way. But with a lot of our posters, you know, they have metallic inks and all these types of things that don't convey themselves in a small computer image. And so it would be a big task to fully like represent yourself in a way that you want to do it. But at the same time, it's kind of that fear of not doing a good job that is keeping me from doing any type of a book. And so I don't know, I should do it, and I should lose 20 pounds. So we'll see.
We've all got something we've all got something to do that we're not doing.
Yeah. Right.
Do you remember the point in your career at which you found your sort of distinctive style that you've got? That's a question from Joel Woodford.
Yeah, it's really hard for me, and I don't know if everyone struggles with this, but like people say, oh, I saw this thing and it really, I could instantly tell it was your style. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't know. I don't have a definable conception, I guess, of my own style in terms of, it's just like, this is what it is. It's the best I could do, hopefully. And I guess that turns into a style, but it's not something that I guess can quantify in terms of like, this is my style, and then I'll do something and people, and I've done that before. I'll do a poster and be like, here you go. And they'll be like, this isn't your style. And I'm like, it's me. I did it. So you're wrong and I'm right. Yeah. So, but people will also email me and say, did you do this thing for, you know, Red Bull or something? And I'm like, I didn't do that. And they're like, it's your style. I could have sworn it was you. And I'm like, it looks like somebody else did it. I mean, that doesn't. So it's really difficult for me to, so then you'd say, well, when did you come up with the style? You're like, I don't even know what that is. I don't know what my style is yet. So it's really hard to say, I mean, I have a couple, I guess, mentally, a couple of styles that I'm like, this is more of a photo reel. This is more of a cartoony. This is more of like a hard lines, which style are we going to go with for this job? And there's easier ones and harder ones. And so you do with that, have that mental conversation when you're working on something. But I don't know when those kind of clicked for me. I feel like I still change. Like, I mean, I'll look at a lot of my older work and be like, I don't even know if I could do this poster like this. I mean, if I was doing a Thing poster this day and age, it would look radically different than the one I did back when we did that first Thing poster. And that's kind of for good and for bad. It's sad that we had something that was so, it was enjoyed by a lot of people and turned out really good. And at the same time, you're like, well, now we do new stuff,
Well, that's an interesting thing there, you say, because there are artists who will revisit, if you've got a long career and you've done, and you feel that you're always growing and whatnot, there are artists who go back and do something different with, they create something else for that same movie, but they get to explore something else that they loved about that film, or that they get to sort of stretch new legs. Or is that something? Would you ever? I mean, obviously, as you can see from the comments that I've read to you, there are lots of people wanting films that you haven't done yet. But so there's a lot of there's a lot of films to get through. But would you ever revisit one?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head by just saying, I mean, people might be a little bit like, what are you doing doing another poster for, let's see, Hell Ride? And you're like, I gotta revisit it. I gotta go back to Hell Ride and do another poster. People are like, no, you don't need to. So any of those, they're just kind of like, I mean, it would have to be for a pretty special thing. I know, like, you never want to say never, because there could be a thing where it's like the director asked or something where you're like, this is a pretty special occasion. But just to do it for like a job for money and stuff, you're like, if you can pick anything out of any star in the sky, why go back to the same planet you've already been on? And that doesn't necessarily, I mean, yeah, it would be difficult. So I think we gravitate more towards completing a whole portfolio of new stuff, and rather than just kind of like, he's the poster that does a lot of he's the poster artist that does a lot of like Iron Giant posters, and I keep doing another one. I'm like, that's one of the reasons I haven't done that poster, because you're like, I saw so many for Iron Giant, which is awesome. I love the movie, but you're like, it doesn't need another one from me because it already is well represented.
I love these words you're creating. I need to write a book. I know.
I'm just an artist.
They can go in your book. They can go in your book. So I think we can perhaps close the door on will you ever do an Iron Giant poster, because you feel that space has been sort of done. There's a question here from someone called Red5, who I can only assume is standing by. So speaking of gallery shows, will Tyler have a sequel to 2013's Stout Taylor show? I think you can extrapolate that also to, would you like to do more shows?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to, but I probably won't. But I mean, no, I shouldn't say. I don't know. I mean, it's again, it goes back to that.
Do you like that idea of having, you create a body of work? And I know that obviously, you create probably, in terms of movie posters, maybe 2 or 3 a year. I know that, but do you get a sense of fulfillment from having, a room full of your work? I suppose not in a narcissistic way, but just a sense of work done, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it'd be something, wouldn't it? It's really difficult because I've always kind of been the guy that, like many of us, I don't necessarily enjoy like being the total focus of anyone's like, this is all about me, because it just isn't the way that works for me, I guess. So I enjoy being part of stuff and kind of being, if people are looking and they're like, oh, I really like this poster, I'm like, oh, I really like this one, and then they move on. And to have everything be completely focused on you, it's it is kind of mentally hard, because it would just be like, I mean, like a retrospective, that would be like, okay, it's already done. So then people can come and be like, I like it. Yeah. I know what to expect. But to expect it and be like, this is all new work and stuff, it's a lot of pressure. And I I don't have that big of a self-esteem where I'm like, this will be worth traveling. Like when people say I'm going to get a plane ticket, I'm like, don't do that.
Don't get. I mean, it's a risky business booking plane tickets at the moment. Anyway,
it is. Right.
Yeah. But you talked about being a completionist, and so perhaps when you've finished a certain body of work, in terms like if it was Tarantino, for example, then a reflection on that might be something that's nice.
It would be, yeah. And I do enjoy them. And I shouldn't say obviously never, because that's not true at all. We do have plans for that. And a lot of people will say, I have these posters that we bought that aren't signed. And so can we ship them to you? And we don't really do that too much anymore.
Yeah, don't PMs Tyler Stout now. Don't now send him loads of emails asking.
Exactly. We don't do it at all, I should say, because Sarah's just getting overwhelmed and things would get damaged and stuff. So we always say, like, at the next event, we'd be happy to sign anything. And so we do need to kind of keep that promise in terms of putting yourself out there enough and be like, I'm at this event, and so I'll be able to sign stuff. And so I do need to follow up on that if there's still a demand for it, and be like, okay, I will go to this thing or that thing. And we did a couple cons back in the day, and those were always fun to meet people. I mean, everybody's always really nice and stuff. So yeah, we should do it. It's just a matter right now. It's easy to say we're probably not going to do it right now because everything's shutting down. But once we get back on our feet as humanity, then we should start looking into doing more shows and stuff.
Well, as we're sort of at the 1:20 mark, in terms of 1 hour 20 mark, and I don't want to be too greedy with your time. What I'll say is, if we go for another sort of 10 minutes, does that sound all right? And I'll invite people. I'll say if people would like to submit their questions. I think 1 hour 30 is you're very generous with your time as it is. So I think 1 hour 30 is probably the right. Is probably the right amount. Do you plan on releasing more apparel like the shoe line? Which is what I was which is how I sort of opened things. And I was talking about you were doing different projects. You released sort of the and socks, right? T-shirts, sweatshirts, etc.
Yeah. Yes, we would love to. So I'm sure everyone knows this, but I can kind of go into it a little bit. It's so you're like, say you had a stack of like 100 posters. It's like, this, and it's like a flat file. And you're like, okay, here's a stack of 100 posters. I can store those forever. I'll sell them. I'll ship them. And then you're like, say you had 100 boxes of shoes. This is a shoe, and you have 100 of those. That takes up a lot of space. And then you have like one poster. That's a one size fit all, unless it gets damaged. Usually that people are like, I love it. It's perfect. Done. With shoes and t-shirts, you ship them. They're like, this is a little tight. Okay, you ship it back. And then we ship them another size. And it opens up, like even with shoes, like having all these sizes available. It was a big, we're just not necessarily set up to like store these things in a way where we're like, if we're making like thousands and thousands of dollars and be like, yeah, this is worth it. But most things we don't do that well on. So it's like, okay, we'll do it. And that was the shoes in particular was a lot of fun. But just storing them, like the ones that you don't sell, you're like, okay, I'm going to donate like 300 pairs to Goodwill. And they're going to be like, everybody in my neighborhood's going to be wearing these shoes and stuff, just because, minimum orders, we certainly made money on them, but minimum orders, you had to order a lot. And so we plan on it. It's just definitely a less of posters are just kind of what we're set up for. And so you can be like, okay, I'm going to store these, we're going to ship these and stuff. Whereas t-shirts, you're like, we got to make sure we get the sizes right, which is why pre-sales, I know everybody hates to pre-order anything because you never know in this day and age if it's ever going to come to you. But if you can pre-order and offer that and have a successful one of those and then sell your shirts, then you already are like, okay, this one is a 4XL. This one is a, small, women's size or whatever. And it gets all your thing, as opposed to trying to guess that and then order this whole bulk of shirts. Everyone's going to ask for a certain size and you sell out of that. And then you have a lot that you don't sell out of. So it's just logistically, it's different. And then it's like anyone, certain people are like, I can really make a living selling custom made, whatever they make, fences or something. And like, we're not set up to make that. So we're set up to do posters. And so we really enjoy those. And sticker packs were kind of branching out, and more like laser cut wood stuff was a lot of fun. And so I know we want to do more shirts. I think shoes, I mean, I don't know. It was a big, it wasn't a success. It wasn't a, but it was fun. I still have them. I have like 10 pairs in my house that I just wear. So it was fun, but it was something that you're like, you need to really have a successful thing and be like, I don't think we're going to be much competition for Nike, so they don't have to worry about encroaching on them.
Tom Chesters has asked me what my favourite piece by you is. Probably, I mean, probably Guardians of the Galaxy, although I don't own it. Your Star Wars is up there for me, and the Shaun of the Dead as well, and some of your gig posters I think are just amazing. So we'll that's out of the way. That's what I really. Those are the pieces that I really like from you, and I've had various ones. Obviously, collections come in and out. Things come in and out in collections. But in terms of what's been on my wall, the True Romance piece, I loved that, and the Avengers as well. Yeah, there's quite a few in my favourites. Okay, so what is your favourite song? That's a really hard one, Tom. What's your favourite song, Tyler?
Yeah, who's this Tom person? What's his last name?
Different Tom. So Tom Chesters, who is an amazing framer in Britain, who is asked me what my favourite post is, and then a different Tom, spelled THOM, asked about your favourite song.
Yeah, that's a hard one. It's like saying, what's your favorite movie? So you're like, and what genre? There's a band. There's a band that that I did a lot of posters for early on. He's in Portland. Now he moved to Maine, the Maine artist, and it was called DeLorean. And it's like the car from Back to the Future, but spelled differently. And I've been listening. I've been listening to a lot of his stuff lately, and I'm just like, this stuff. It's kind of folk music, but it's very relaxing and. I would recommend checking out any of his albums. I know you can download a bunch of them. They made them available for free. And so if you just Google DeLorean, but spelled differently, if you look at some of my older posters, you'll see it in there. It's like DOLOREAN or something. And Alex is the main guy who does that. And I think he has a beautiful voice. And I just really enjoyed his stuff. And so it's weird how you kind of get locked in a certain time period. And you're like, this is all I kind of really listen to, and you listen to new stuff and older stuff, but then you keep kind of coming back to that, and that's the way I am. I kind of focused on his output and really enjoyed it, and so that's the stuff I mostly listen to right now on heavy rotation.
Nice. I apparently misread the question, and that's just because my eyes are very tired now. Okay, I've been doing this for quite a few hours this weekend. It was, what's your favourite soup? Obviously, it was soup. What's your favourite soup? Do you like soup, Tyler? We're asking the big questions right now.
Oh, okay. Well, that's different. It's also DeLorean. That's my favorite soup. No. Yeah, that's a good question. Sarah makes a beef vegetable that's like a classic that my grandma used to make. And that's the one where my kids absolutely hate it. And so I'm like, this soup, I could eat this every day forever. It's very comforting, and it has the big cubes of beef. I'm not yet a vegetarian. I probably, should look into it and stuff, but I enjoy it. So.
Okay. And what's your favorite food and drink is also in there?
Whew, well, let's see. Man, that is, again, like.
Biggest questions right now.
Yeah. I can't even. I got this lemon bar ice cream that I'm. The goal this year is to lose a little bit of weight, which is why I'm eating a lot of lemon bar ice cream. But it's this flavor that I really enjoy. And drinks. I've never been a big alcohol drinker, and it's not because of any like religious convictions or anything. It's just it's like coffee. I never clicked with it, and so now like people are like, yeah, let's go grab a coffee, and I'm like, I do tea just because I enjoy tea a lot, and then with drink, I guess I would say that, yeah, I do a lot of tea. So that would be probably my favorite one. I'm doing a lot of green tea, and it's like Moroccan mint or something. And I like to kind of be like a little bit of a mixer-upper. So I'll like do one bag of Moroccan mint, then I'll like a lemon zinger or whatever. And I'll be like, okay, this is like my own concoction. And I don't know. It has caffeine.
So it's like I don't know if you're how familiar you are with Roald Dahl, but it's like a George's Marvelous Medicine of tea.
Exactly. Yeah.
Andrew Swainson asks, when you're designing a print in your head, are you working on a regular version of the poster? Do you only think about variants after the fact, or is there sort of this constant conscious awareness of variations as you're going along?
Yeah. I mean, that is a good question. I was just thinking about that recently. The whole history of the idea of variance, which now it's like we'll get like, contracts from like these movie studio type people, and they'll say, you can print this many regulars, this many variants. And I'm like, you're using terminology that I feel like we kind of developed back in the day. And I remember like talking again with Rob, because he's the first movie guy. And he was like, we'll do a regular version. Then what if we do a different version that we'll call like it's the variant version? And that was I don't know, I'm sure people were doing it before then. I should say he kind of got that idea from an artist named Jermaine Rogers, who he was like that guy, and he's still around. And he's like, he's doing variants. And so like, what if we take that and put that in movie posters? And I mean, someone probably came up with that before this whole conversation, but for me, that was like when the whole thing kind of came into being. And now it's such a commonplace, like, I mean, until recently, variant was a very good word, but now obviously not so much, the COVID variant.
Yeah. We have the Delta variant has been sort of named the Boris variant here because
so
it's all his fault.
But and variants again, they were always like, you do your best foot forward is the regular, and then like kind of a Marvel what if, but only with posters. I haven't started watching it. Everyone says I should, so
I think there's some cracking episodes in there.
I've heard good things.
In terms of just on variants, and I will now look to wrap it up. But in terms of variants, you say obviously that the reg, and lots of artists say, okay, the reg is my favorite. But does that ever change after the fact in terms of like, once it's all is said and done, and you just look back on things, do you ever go, actually,
yeah,
my favorite is now changed, and it's just because your taste has changed,
Yeah.
Does that happen?
Absolutely. Yeah, that happens. Not all the time, because I can look through all my posters, the movie posters, and even now when bands are requesting variants, and the majority of them you're kind of like, this is my favorite, and the regular. But then there'll be ones like Avengers. I'm like, the variant is, to me, I like it more. It was monochrome and like reds and grays. And like, to me, it's more iconic looking. I like it. True Romance, they did a foil variant, which I've never been a huge foil guy. It always seems a little gimmicky, but for this one, it was like the Coke mirror type stuff. And so they did foils, and it turned out the printing was just that. It just, something was a little bit different, and the grays were a little bit lighter. And I just really like, if I was going to frame one of my movie posters, I'd be like that. I'd frame that. I shouldn't say it's my favorite of all my movie posters, but that would be of the True Romances, that foil variant, but was the superior one. But you kind of don't know that until things start to kind of happen and stuff. So we try to make it so the regular edition is the one that you're going to be printing the most of, and it's always drives me crazy to print the most of something that is inferior to something else, unless it's like color numbers.
A bit of cognitive dissonance there.
right. But if it's like color numbers, like you're saying, the regular has 5, the variant has 10, then you're going to be, but you just charge more because of that. And so, of course, the variant might be superior because of printing, but you're also putting more money into it to make it a more superior version.
Tyler, it's been amazing. There are more questions, but I could go on for ages. But Tyler, you have an invitation to AMPjam 2022. If you would like to come, there's no pressure right now, but you would be most welcome. And
I
people
appreciate
have
it.
loved to have some of your time and get to know you a little better. So I would like to take the end of this session, as it's the end of AMPjam convention, just to I can reveal, providing Key gets the slide ready. We are not that. Not this. No, not that. Okay, cool. So AMPjam 2022 is a thing, and it will take place on the 9th to the 11th of September 2022. So everybody, we are going to come back. What I like to do, Tyler, is if I am scared of my own idea, I make it public, and then I'm beholden to it. I don't know if that helps. You get it sort of a drag
Exactly.
You get a pull from the fact that you made things public, and the fear of public humiliation takes you to where you need to be. But that's how it works for me.
That's good. Good.
Thank you so much for your time. As I say, you do have an open invitation, but always, to be honest. And people have really appreciated in the comments that they've really appreciated having you here. So thank you very much, and thank you everybody for watching. No doubt I will probably post some kind of live video on Facebook about how exhausted and emotional I am, and how we all are, because it's been a hell of a ride. Thank you for joining us for AMPjam 2021, and I'll see you at AMPjam 2022. See you guys. Good. Thank you so much, Tyler. Thank you.